was first aware of the problems when I first came to vote here at 5:45, straight after uni. The situation was when I first arrived that initially only people with high polling card numbers were being ushered to the front, but by the time I left, which was after 8 o'clock, the situation was that they were calling out for residents and students in separate queues.
So when did you decide to go home and set up the Facebook group? What made you decide that?
Sheer anger.
Yeah.
Not just of my own, everyone I was with who voted with. I spoke to random people in a queue who I both knew and didn't know. Initially it was set up to organise that everyone who had the situation was able to email complaints to the same place, but it just grew and became the campaign it is.
I mean, were you generally surprised by the overwhelming response that the group got? Because I was trawling through the other day and it literally was minute by minute throughout the whole election night after the polls had closed. People were leaving comments, all sorts of people from all sorts of places. Were you surprised by the response?
I was really surprised. I was supposed to be watching the election night on TV, but from 12 o'clock onwards I was sat in front of the computer trying to sort out the campaign and the media that we were getting from it.
What did you make of some of the reaction of people that left comments on the site? Because there was some, obviously, students from around here. There was others that were saying stuff like, you know, lazy students couldn't be bothered to get up at, you know, whatever time it was because they had so many hours to go and vote. What did you make of the reaction of some people?
I think initially anyone who wrote those comments didn't understand the situation, because the point was that people weren't turning up really late at night. Many students who weren't able to vote were people who turned up at 8 o'clock with over 2 hours then to queue to vote, which is not implausible time. I know a lot of students who were busy during the day who didn't want to go at 5 o'clock because they thought there'd be the residents' queue. The situation was that anyone who turned up at 8 o'clock should have had the chance to vote, but because of segregated queues they weren't able to because residents who turned up after them were. We're not complaining that as much that people weren't able to vote. We understand that was a problem across the whole country. However, the situation here was that the majority of people who weren't able to vote were students or residents that refused to join the offered residents' queue, and therefore the people who were acting the most democratically were the ones who were not given their chance to vote.
Were you surprised that it all it escalated up into, did you expect it to have escalated into something that would have made a national story? Because it was literally Sheffield, this is the first place it happened, or the first sort of place it was made aware that there were problems with the voting.
I was amazed at the escalation. Initially the media reaction wasn't in any way influenced or recognising the problem with student segregation at this polling station, but as the night went on and throughout the rest of the week, the media were very responsive to the fact that there was discrimination against students in this polling station.
So after the event, what do you think could be the main lesson learned from this? Because obviously this election generated so much interest, and presumably they didn't anticipate that there was going to be a high turnout from students, for example. What do you think can be learned from this whole experience, not just necessarily here, but for other places that had problems, Manchester, Leeds and so on?
I think initially that councils need to recognise that although there has been perhaps a lower turnout of votes in the past from students, that is not a reason to predict and not give facilities that are capable of resources for those students to vote. Also, I think it goes to show that the situation throughout Sheffield Hallam was that a lot of polling stations weren't prepared. Whether there was 5,000 students here or just residents, the polling station here was not capable of dealing with the amount of constituents. And
I think rumours going round, or it was circulating that apparently for the next general election, whenever that may be, they were considering putting polling stations in university halls. Is that something you'd like to see?
If that means that a situation like this won't happen again, I think it's a good idea, but at the same time I believe that, again, we're segregating students on the basis of their occupation. There is no other group which are kind of told to vote at a specific living or workplace. What I think is more appropriate is that they have better facilities throughout the constituency with possibly more polling stations, but I think any response which is helping students at this point, considering the last election, is welcome.
What kind of support have you had from the union or from councillors, MPs, celebrities even? Have you had, how much of an influence have you had from them?
The union's been brilliant. Both Sheffield Union and Sheffield Hallam Union have both been talking to the council, John Mothersole in particular, and working with them to try and get answers and an apology from them, which is still pending. The media has been very good as far as recognising what's gone on and often portraying us in a very reasonable way rather than the typical lazy student perspective which some forms have tried to take. On the whole, it's been really well received.